You're listening to Saladin Kunaya Allah. This is Asia Talk Radio.
Peace and welcome to Atlantis Build Talk Radio, the premier station for 5% of Nation of Gods and Earth social commentary, interviews, musicology, and uncensored discussions about the science of everything in life. This station is a subsidiary of Asia and the Atlantis School for Gifted Youngsters at www.atlantischool.blogspot.com and Asia TV at YouTube/Quanaya, QUANAAH.
So, without further ado, what a show we have today. We have an amazing guest. We've been trying to get on the show since we started, forever, and he's finally agreed to come on. He's a long-time mentor, friend, and dear colleague of mine, Saladin Allah of the 5%, the 5%ers, better known as the Nation of Gods and Earth. And he's an author. He's printed out heaps of books. He's a life skills coach, I guess you say. Does some work with the United Nations as well. I have to double check with him on that. I'm pretty sure he has some involvement. Does community outreach. He does absolutely everything. And now he has an animation series, which we're going to talk to him about as well. And we really love building and working with the 5%ers over there in New York. Great community-minded people, will love to build positively. And we thought a lot of people constantly hit me up and say, hey, what's all with all this 5%er stuff? And, they don't understand it. And I don't think it's my place to talk on it because... that's why I thought I'd invite Saladin on so he can inform our listeners exactly what the 5%ers are and the nations of gods and earth and what they're all about and how they're really at the foundation of the hip-hop culture. And without them, we wouldn't really have hip-hop culture too. Mind you, there are other community groups that are also involved. As we know, the whole deal with Zulu Nation and all them as well. We had the poor white people's movement as well. There were a few Hispanic movements like Vice Lords and stuff like that that were all involved in that original get down original peace treaty, really. Street peace treaty, which were brokered by community leaders instead of government officials and whatnot. But anyway, we're going to let Saladin Allah talk about all that because that is his deal. He's the one that, educates me. And also, guides me as well. So when I say something stupid, which I do a lot, or, comment on something I really have no foundation on, he sort of steps in and gives me a guiding hand. And speaking of giving guiding hands, I also heard he's advising Star in the Morning, who is a radio show host over in the US as well. So we're going to see if we can talk to him about that because he's one of my favorite radio DJs as well. So, like I said, we've got a jam-packed show for you today, and I can't wait to get into it. So, shout out to all the gods and all the earths that may be listening. Hit us up. We all love to hear from you. So, jump on our socials and let's build. Until then, you know what? Are you there?
Peace. Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, we finally got you, so you can hear me loud and clear.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
I don't know what the problem was with the whole Facebook Connect, but we finally got you. Peace, God. Thank you for coming on Shotz N Hits 2 GLF 89.3 FM.
Yo, that was the Illuminati.
What was? Trying to stop us from connecting. Yeah, right. See, they're trying to stop because today, too, I just had a look. It's the age, so it's build or destroy, too. So I'm like, we're trying to be building, they're trying to be destroying, G.
Yeah. Well, it's the God Day over here on the East Coast in America. So
it's okay, right? Because that's right. You know what? Well, may I say, this may be trippy, but welcome to the future.
Ooh.
You're technically talking to yourself tomorrow.
Yeah. It's good talking to you, though. So what's been going on?
Nothing much, brother. We've just been playing some old school throwbacks today on Shotz N Hits, and before that we had the Freestyle Fellowship with Hot Potato.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that joint when it came out.
Yeah, so we're going back a bit. So I thought, you know, since we were trying to be all godly like, let's keep it old school. And yeah, so now we've got you on the air. So tell us, first of all, I guess we should say you're an author. I didn't want to say a self-help guru, but how would you describe what it is that you do exactly for our listeners?
I would say an artivist. So it's a combination between an artist and an activist.
Okay, I've never heard that one before.
Yeah, and this is pretty broad, you know, and my main focus is on youth advocacy as well as community outreach. So I do a lot of different things that are components of that advocacy and outreach. So, for example, I do youth mentorship programs. I actually teach early childhood development. I'm a preschool teacher.
Right.
I actually just finished a 5-week summer camp program with 9 to 12-year-olds just last Friday.
Damn.
So I got like about a couple of weeks breathing room before I have to get prepared for the upcoming school year. So I do that in terms of youth advocacy. I've been doing that for over 20 years, working with youth from preschool age all the way up to college age. And in that capacity, I've worked with various different organizations, institutions, agencies. I have my own organization, Asia, which is what I do a lot of my projects, programs, and initiatives under. If people were interested in getting more information about it, all they got to do is just Google hashtag Atlantis build, and they see some of those other different components. You know, I have my own radio show. I publish books. I do, hip hop.
Yeah.
You know,
you got a video clip out there too of you busting some lyrics to some Consciousness Awakened joints too with DJ Arkin.
Yeah. That's my brother.
Yeah, he's one down dude. But am I correct? Do you have something to do with United Nations as well, or you did have, or you were a representative as well on one of their committees?
Yeah, I'm a human rights commissioner for my city. So I was appointed along with other board members by our city council to basically serve in that capacity. So what we do is we ensure that our citizenry, their rights in terms of whatever different issues that they're dealing with, as well as visitors to our city, that they're actually protected in terms of their ethnicity, their race, their age, any of those various different things that people could be discriminated about. So I serve in that capacity for my city.
Cool. Because I wasn't quite too sure if that was relevant or not still. So I didn't want to just brand you with the one brush. Now, as you know, I constantly get bombarded on my socials and emails asking about just what the 5%ers are, and I feel like I'm not not privy to, but I don't feel like I have the authority to speak on it, which is why I thought I'd get you on the show so you can enlighten all our listeners to exactly what the 5%ers are.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that you have that sense of humility, knowing that speaking on something that may be somewhat complicated or sophisticated to the average person to understand. Because just me learning about this culture, I had the exact same posture, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't really as sure as I felt that I was before I started actually teaching, in the role of a civilized person. So my thing that I use as a rule of thumb is when a person's asking me about what a 5%er is, I ask them, where did they hear that from?
Right.
Where did they get exposed from? Because when you when you do that, you kind of get a sense of where a person is at,
right,
and what they've actually been exposed to, and then you have much more of an opportunity to reach them where they are in regards to what this is. So for example, if I come in contact with a person and they say, "Oh, Saladin, are you a 5%er, huh?" I'll be like, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, right.
Oh, because of your name. And then I ask them another question. Well, what about my name gives you the impression that I'm a 5%er? Oh, you have Allah in your name, and that is not really customary of what a Muslim would actually do. So I assume that you're a 5%er. So by that just short conversation, they're kind of communicating to me the level of exposure that they've had to the culture.
Right.
So I kind of know where I can steer the direction of that conversation. But then if I'm talking to somebody else and they say, oh, are you a 5%? And I'll be like, oh, why are you asking that? And they'd be like, because my brother's in that gang. Now that's a whole different type of conversation I need to have, because it's telling me that they have some disinformation and misinformation about what the culture is.
Yeah.
So for the most part, you have to find out where a person is before you are able to even meet them where they are to explain certain things to them. Now, to give a person a general overview of what a 5%er is, that is really just a sociological term, meaning out of the entire population of the planet, you're always going to have a small percentage of that population who are like the thought leaders, people who are the beacons of light demographically, that are leading the rest of the masses of people in the right direction. The most learned amongst that demographic, who have more of a sense of self. And if you look at it just geographically as well as chronologically, a person like Jesus, whether he was real or mythological, a person that represented that archetype or that identity would be considered a 5%er in his time.
Because of the whole enlightening aspect, right?
Yeah. Or Buddha, he will be considered a 5%er. Or even in more modern times, somebody like Bob Marley or Bruce Lee.
Or in Martin Luther, even all those kind of... Someone like even like Martin Luther and stuff like that for like more modern references.
Yeah, you know, because they had certain qualities in terms of being civilized people who had more of a true sense of what God actually was within the person of a human being.
Right.
You know, not a mysterious concept of God that was disassociated from who they were and the human condition, but people that had a very strong sense of not only their identity, but also their responsibility to the human family in terms of being a beacon of light and ensuring that people had access to resources so that they can grow and develop.
Right.
And there's certain things that are similar amongst these people, regardless of the geographic location, the ethnicity, the gender, or the time. That is one of the things that we say about the 5%. You have a small population of people who represent this identity of the enlightened ones amongst their people.
I'm glad you brought that up, because before that you were saying what was a person's exposure. I don't know how common this is with you, but in particular out here in Sydney, in particular, a lot of people come up to me and say, yo, Spins, I just watched DJ Vlad and I saw Lord Jamar, and what's all this like 5% of stuff? And that's usually their first exposure that they have. And it's either all one way, as in totally negative, or totally positive. Yeah, like I agree 100%. Or what the hell is he talking about? Like this white devil stuff and all this kind of thing. Just to get clear, when you guys like talk about devils, you're not actually talking as in mythological creatures. You're talking about like the personal natures of people and things like that, right?
First and foremost, that's not a primary conversation that we even have.
Right.
No, meaning that is not one of our core teachings or principle and value that we govern our life by. So, for example, in our Supreme Mathematics, it says nothing about devil.
Right.
So that's not even something we're preoccupied with. Even in our Supreme Alphabet, there's nothing in there that says anything about devil. And the mathematics and the alphabet comprises our language. This is how we communicate.
Right.
So the language you use to communicate actually are the means for you to transmit ideas and concepts. So conceptually, we're not thinking about the devil and preoccupied about that, you know. So sometimes when people bring that up, they have a misconception about what it is that we teach. We teach about our own identity as being not only the original people of the planet Earth, but also divine beings.
Right.
Meaning, if you have a true sense of who you are, why are you occupied or thinking about somebody else?
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean?
And I think this is why I think people like you need to come out and have this platform, is because that is their first exposure, and that is what I'm sort of trumped with, pardon the expression, of what I have to deal with straight off the bat. And that's why I kind of say I don't think I'm able to speak on that because I don't have that God knowledge on how to deal with that particular situation.
Well, here's a very good way to respond to a person that's asking you about are white people devils or anything like that.
Yeah.
Somebody asks you, is a white man a devil or are white people devils? Your response is, if they choose to be.
Right. As like with
Because
anyone else, right?
Yeah, that's going to create more conversation. Like, what do you mean by that? It's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
If a person chooses to be civilized or uncivilized, that is their choice. Now, the 19th letter in our alphabet is the letter S, which means self or savior.
Right.
So 19, 1 is knowledge, 9 is born. So
Yeah.
your responsibility is to make knowledge born to people or to share resources and information with people, and they have the responsibility of doing something with it themselves.
Right.
So you can't save anybody. A person has to be willing to save themselves, and everybody has the right to choose their own destiny, like Bob Marley oftentimes said. And if it's devilishment, that is their choice.
Right.
If they choose to be devil, that is what it is. But everybody has an opportunity to be righteous. Everybody. It is not our responsibility to say what somebody is or is not going to be.
Right.
Because as soon as you put yourself in that position, you can be proven wrong. And in terms of mathematics, you don't strive to position yourself where you can be proven wrong, because mathematics is right and exact.
Yeah.
So the most right and exact position to take is if a person chooses to be.
Right. And just listening that don't have any idea on what it is you're talking about when it comes to supreme alphabets or supreme mathematics. Supreme mathematics and supreme alphabets, the best way I could describe it to Australians that may be listening is, like you said, is the language used internally by the 5%ers, correct?
True indeed.
Right. So basically, every letter has a numerical equal value. So 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, and both the numeric value and the alpha value have actual meanings attached to them, right?
Absolutely.
So how would you explain, besides that, supreme mathematics and supreme alphabets to people here that have no comprehension of what it is that we're talking about?
Okay, well, if anybody has ever studied like ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt,
Right.
One of the ways that we communicated in that particular time is we used glyphs, which were symbols that represented ideas.
Right.
And when you look at the numbers in the system, 1 through 9, as well as a cipher or a 0, those are Arabic numerals.
Right.
It's not Roman numerals or anything else. They're Arabic numerals. And the number itself actually represents not just a quantity, but it also represents a quality. 1 is an abstract idea. 1 is only 1 when it is related to something that is concrete. So, for example, 1 apple, 1 horse, 1 shoe. You understand what it means contextually when it is related to something that is concrete within physical reality, right? Now, that is in the form of a quantity. When you're talking about it as a quality, 1 in our language, we say that 1 symbolizes knowledge. Why do we say that? Not because we just made it up. It's because we identified in nature that the first principle is consciousness.
Right.
A person can't even think about what I just said without using consciousness first. So obviously it has to be the foundation. You have to have that first. The number 2 is symbolic to wisdom because wisdom means right discernment. It's judgment. The only way that you have an opportunity to judge anything is if you have duality.
Right.
If you have a choice. So wisdom represents the number 2 or duality. Now, when you look at it in just a very simple way, the number 2 represents wisdom because it cannot precede knowledge. Knowledge has to come before wisdom. I would encourage anybody to just go out there tomorrow and do something without having any knowledge of it first and see how many wise decisions you're going to be capable of making without knowledge first.
Right and exact.
You know?
Yeah.
So knowledge always precedes wisdom because you can't make wise decisions if you don't know anything first. if you're not conscious or aware first.
Right.
What will happen is you'll find yourself out in life making decisions, and then you find out through mistakes and through folly that the wisest thing for you to do is to gain knowledge of that particular experience first before you put yourself out there. Even if you're striving to get into a relationship or something like that, get to know a person first. You know what I'm saying? If you want to go and attend a certain university or college, or if you wanted to apply for a job, get to know about the job responsibilities or the job description or the functions of that particular position before you go out there and strive to do it, because you're going to be more liable to make mistakes that way. So this is just identifying natural life processes.
Right.
It's not like we're just taking these words and associating them with these numerals. Nah, we recognize basic principles in life. So 1, 2, 3 is knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Why? Because once you know something, you become aware. Now you have the capacity to make wiser decisions, which means then you have the ability to understand or comprehend that whole process.
Right.
And it happens in that order. You can't understand something before you know what it is.
Okay.
You know, it's just like 1, 2, and 3. You know, so supreme mathematics is basically a way of viewing life where you see the interconnection of all things around you. Because everything around you is essentially mathematics in a costume. Everything is. Even if you're looking at it on a subatomic level.
Yeah.
Based upon the combination of those atoms, it's going to determine whatever elements those are on that periodic table. It all goes back to mathematics. Everything goes back to mathematics. So supreme mathematics is not only calculating the moves you make in life, but also seeing the quality of those moves that you make in life.
Word.
Now, you go into the supreme alphabet. The alphabet has words that are qualities that are associated with those particular letters. Just like I mentioned a little earlier, the 19th letter is S.
Yeah.
So what we say is, okay, S is self or savior, meaning, like I said, 1 is knowledge, 9 is born. Our responsibility is to make knowledge born or to share information with others, and it's on them to save themselves. Sometimes people say you bring a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Yep, I feel you.
You know? You give person access to knowledge, but you can't make them think. So these are natural life processes what we identify, and as a language, this language is a way of not only reinforcing our identity as divine beings, but it allows us to communicate with each other in a way that reinforces our identity and our relationship to the universe. For example, you have some people that grow up in a society where they wake up in the morning and they're listening to some music on the radio that is not productive, positive, or progressive. And that orientates them, not only how they see themselves, but also how they attend the world and how they communicate with other people. As 5%ers, there's certain words that we don't even use in our language. The same way if you were to go to certain indigenous tribes, they may not have words in their language for maybe, probably, might, anything like that. They don't have language that conveys that sense of uncertainty.
Right.
Same way in our language, we don't use words like try, because try means fail.
Yeah, like you're not giving it your 100% ability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because what it does is it reinforces what we essentially are. You know, being indoctrinated into religion, a lot of times people adopt ideas that betrays their infinite potential. So they may have these ideas of, you know, we're only human, you know, that's all I can do, we all fall short, all of these different ideas that that contradicts their infinite potential or the consciousness that dwells within their form.
Right.
You know, even within the Bible, a lot of times you have people that deal with a host of contradictions. Right in the Genesis, it tells you that you're made in the image and the likeness of God, but then at the same time, people buy into these ideas that I'm only human.
Yeah,
that's all I can.
I'm prone to failure, and yeah. Like even if you go into like the Lord's Prayer and stuff like that, I think there's a line in it that says, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven," and they, like, Catholics constantly repeat this line, but yet it hasn't dawned on them, as in, like, your will is godly, and what can be done up there can be done down here. Like, if you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and even with Catholicism, a lot of the rites that they perform their rituals in and the different ways that they communicate amongst each other, they use Latin, which is a dead language.
Yeah, right.
Which people just normally don't even speak. So it's like that whole idea of keeping the masses ignorant and illiterate has allowed to consolidate that power in terms of feeding people whatever they want them to know without having true direct access to what it is that they should be knowing. And when you look at religion, you oftentimes have that hierarchy structure where you're never going to elevate to that point where you have that, as they say in religion, that personal relationship with your creator. There's always some mediator or intercessor between you and that relationship when it comes to religion. But as 5%ers, the way we live is a natural way of life. It's a culture. It's not a religion. So we don't have no hierarchy structure.
Right.
I've gotten knowledge of self, or I started studying this culture, and I learned just the basics of what the culture is and developed to the point where I can actually be an enlightener, which means I'm capable of teaching other people this culture in a formal way, September 30th, 1995. So I've been living this way all of that time, right? Now, somebody could meet that just got knowledge 5 years ago. That don't mean that I'm greater or better or nothing than them. Their voice is equal to mine. We're the same. We're one mind.
Yeah.
It's no hierarchy, like I'm greater or nothing like that. I mean, they may concede to me in some scenarios simply because I have a little bit more experience, or I may be more of a lord of a certain world, but it's equally the same with them. They may be a lord of a certain world, or they may have more experience, and I concede to them.
Yeah.
But it's one mind. It's not no hierarchy. You know what I mean?
I feel you. And also, too, just while we're still on, before we move on to our next question, while we're still on the supreme mathematics and supreme alphabets, one concept that when I started learning this, or when you started teaching me this kind of stuff, that blew my mind was the whole counting from 1 to 9 and there's no 10, as in the cycle just repeats after that, as in if you want to use the number 10, it's born in it's knowledge and wisdom, cipher, right? So it's like, how does that happen, as in, why isn't there like the 10, the 11, the 12? Can you just explain that quickly?
What do you mean?
As in, like, well, in supreme mathematics, you only got the 1 to 9 and then cipher, right? As in, there's no 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because when you look at it as a cycle of life, when things go from inception to conception, that's actually a life cycle that takes place not only with a human being, but just in every living form that is in this universe. So when you look at the mathematics of that, everything breaks back down to its lowest common denominator, or like KRS-One once said in his My Philosophy joint, broken down to its very last compound.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I'm trying to, like, convey, say, for example, if I'm learning this and I know, there's more than 10 letters in the alphabet, say, for example. Yeah. So why is there more than 10 numbers, say, for example, like zigzag, zig, and then, like you said, you got self or savior and all that kind of thing? How is that then able to go to double numerals, but it isn't in regular supreme mathematics?
Because the supreme mathematics, those basic numerals are 1 to 9 in the cipher.
Right. And like you said, we just repeat it, right?
Fundamental system.
Yeah.
And one of the differences with like the Arabic numerals in comparison to like the Roman numerals or any of those other number systems is the Arabic numerals 1 through 9 in cipher allows you to do more higher forms of mathematics because it allows you to have place value. Right. Roman numerals don't have no place value, so it does not allow you to do these higher forms or complicated forms of mathematics like algebra or anything like that. Now, when you get into the language, in terms of the alphabet, even though you have, for example, the letter M, even though that is a letter 13, it still breaks down to 4.
Right.
So there's an intimate relationship or a connection between that. How? When you look at 13 in our alphabet, that is M, which stands for master.
Yeah.
A master is not only one that has control, but a master is also one that prepares the way for grandmasters. And that is basically because that person's knowledge and understanding. When you look at 13, 1 knowledge and 3 understanding, the bridge that links the two is wisdom. And that is one of the main qualities or characteristics that a master is known for, their wisdom. Right. And one of the wisest things that a master can actually do is to prepare the way for grandmasters, for those who will succeed them. Right? Now, when you look at 1 and 3, it breaks down to 4. 4 is culture. So what is the relationship in that? That is the continuity of mastership. It's a culture. It's a way of life.
Right.
If a master did not prepare the way, then that particular technique or whatever it is that they actually studied and learned will die with them.
Yeah.
That does not show you a sign of a master or a person that's wise, because they don't have a sense of sustainability.
And not only that, like a master should be pairing, or if not creating a new culture, should be pairing the culture for what's to come as well, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
you know what I mean? So so there's a relationship in all of those different things.
Absolutely. And another thing people are asking me about on Facebook now too is Alex has asked me, when we were talking earlier, how we were mixing the date and saying what we're saying in terms of the date. Well, basically, I'll let Saladin comment on it further, but when 5%ers agree with each other, we say, peace, God, what's today's math? Can you enlighten people a bit more about building in terms of on the date of what it actually is, like, say, today, and yours was well, for us, it was yesterday, so you're on the 7th, which was, you were saying it was God, and for me, it was for the 8th. So could you, like, elaborate a bit more on that?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, our language reinforces our identity. Not only does it reinforce our identity, but it psychologically orientates us and allows us to communicate with one another. That reinforces our identity, as well as how we attend this world. Each day, because it has a numerical value to it, we don't just see that as a number. We see it as a quality, and that psychologically orientates us. So, for example, a person may have woken up today, and when it comes to orientating themselves and how they prepare themselves for the day, they may be a Christian, so they may have read some biblical scriptures or whatever to kind of get their mind right before they go out throughout the course of their day. A Muslim, they may have read some surahs in the Quran or whatever. Somebody, they might have got up and listened to some trap music. You never know. People do various different things that psychologically orientates them. With us, when we consider the date has significant value to us as well. Today, where I'm at, was the 7th. So just meditating on the idea and the concept of 7 within our mathematics, which represents God, that orientates me a certain way. And it reinforces not only my identity, but also the way that I communicate with other members of my nation or people who live this culture, whose mind is on the same thing. It's not on some things that don't reinforce our identity. Yeah. So living in a society that has been pro-white and anti-black and brown, it's very difficult to live and not be affected by the supremacist structures and the institutions, as well as the way that the resources are directed to support other members of the society, coming out of that kind of scenario in a society unscathed. Right. So basically, you have to reconstruct your whole identity and make sure that you are inoculating yourself or immunizing yourself against those attacks on your identity. One way of doing that is you reorientate yourself psychologically. I mean, some Christians will say they put on the armor of God before they go out of their house. It's the exact same concept. You're putting on the weaponry to defend yourself from the constant attacks on who you are. Yeah. Regardless of who you say you are. You ain't even got to be a 5%er. If you're a person that may be elderly.
Mm-hmm.
You're an elder. In a lot of societies, elders' rights are not protected. If you are a military veteran,
Yeah.
you may have to put on your armor of God or your weaponry to defend yourself, because you go out in this society and there may not be a lot of resources or a lot of respect for you serving in the armed services.
Yeah.
You have to be able to deal with that and find a way of coping with that. It's one of the things that we do that allows us to maintain our sanity and orientate us psychologically in a way where living our culture is effective and efficient.
Yeah, I feel you. And another common question I also get too, which I want to build more with you on later in terms of the history and the development of the nation of gods of earth, is one common question I get is they see the 5% nation and the nation of gods on earth as like a pan-African movement, and there's something that is like pro-black and all this kind of stuff. And I keep constantly getting asked, like, why am I involved, or this or that and the other? How can you be a pan-Africanist and all this kind of thing? And not that I get sick of trying to answer this. I'm not too sure how to convey to them about the whole that the nation of gods on earth is neither anti-white nor pro-black or anti-anything or pro-anything. How do I explain to someone the nature of when I get questions like that thrown at, or even if they read something and someone says they might talk about, say, Marcus Garvey or something like that? How does that come into the framework?
Well, one thing, I appreciate you having me on this show, because I'm sure people that may have those type of misconceptions that are listening to me, they'll realize that I'm pan common sense.
Yeah.
Or I'm pro common sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
I feel you.
Coming from an Afrocentric perspective, now I'm just speaking universal. And if it applies to you, that's good. If you don't think that it applies, then go out there and put your own theories to the test and see what results you get. You know,